Welcome to the NextGen podcast, where we explore the next generation's perspective on the future of business. This podcast is powered by Commercient Sync. You can learn more about integrating your ERP and CRM today at commercient.com.
So hi everyone, I'm Victoria Jenkins. I'm the content specialist here at Commercient, and I'm also one of the youngest members of the Commercient team. And Noah?
And I'm Noah Thomas. I'm the head of marketing and partnerships here at Commercient, and I am part of the millennial generation.
And so today we're joined by Yoann Pavy, the VP of Marketing at Laced, which is a newer app, I would say revolutionizing the whole sneaker or tennis shoe selling industry, right?
That's it.
Great,
Thank you for inviting me, guys.
Yeah, no worries. And so Yoann, you also worked at Depop and Deliveroo, correct?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So for all of our American listeners, Deliveroo is basically a British or UK-based Uber Eats style food delivery app. Yeah. And so I think are most delivery drivers on bikes, whereas Uber Eats is cars and bikes. Is that like the main difference?
It's a bit mixed now. Even for us in the UK, it's bikes, scooters, and sometimes rarely cars. But they're being flexible as well.
Interesting. Yeah. I do actually. There was one time I ordered on Deliveroo, and the guy was walking. Like he walked 2 kilometers all the way from Kentish Town to central London. Never had that happen, but yeah, good. Yeah. It was like 11 p.m.
They could be working for both. So if they're on a car with Uber Eats, they use the same.
Oh, okay. Really cool. Yeah. So we want to talk to you today a bit about marketing, especially with these new companies that are primarily app-based. So as you worked for both Depop and Deliveroo, which are both huge companies with primarily based on apps. So how does this compare to typical web stores such as like Squarespace or Etsy shops? And do you think we'll continue to see companies that solely do retail on apps in future?
So I think it's an interesting one. So right now at Laced, we are thinking of building an app. We for now just on web, but we obviously thinking very very carefully about app. I think to your question, I would say that yes, apps are very important for multiple reasons. For example, getting closer to your customer, having some prime real estate on people's smartphones, which also count as branding. So people will see your app, depending on what you placed on someone's screen. It doesn't have to be on the home page, but people will see your logo. And you can do some pretty clever things as well on changing the icon of your app. If you're a pretty small company, there's some like interesting marketing hacks around getting people's attention on using the icon of your app. But there is a bit of that. Loyalty, an app loads faster than a website as well. Depending on your app, you don't have to be online. It could work offline as well, depending on what you provide. So I think generally speaking, apps are still very important for any companies, really, as long as it provides additional value to your brand. If it's just a copy of your website, you're giving a bit of flexibility, but it doesn't really add much to it. But I think it's a big opportunity also for retention. You can bring people back to your app for many different reasons. Using push notifications and things like that, which make your communication a little bit better than just email, for example. I think that's why apps are important, and that's why like some of these companies, especially marketplaces, whether it's in the food industry or the fashion industry or secondhand market, or focused on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had kind of a little bit of a follow-up question on that because so with Commercient and the customers that we get in, a lot of our customers are in B2B sales, and they're just now starting to kind of move their model to also a B2C model. So they're just starting to either make consumer-facing goods, or maybe they've always made consumer-facing goods, but they've gone through a traditional like distribution system, and now they're trying to work on direct channels. So one of the questions that we get a lot that is totally unrelated to what we do as an app company is, when do you make an app versus when do you make a website, which I think Victoria covered a little bit. But then the second question I always get is, does an app only speak to the younger market? Like, do you feel like that's a type of multi-channel targeting towards a generational target, being like more millennial and Gen Z even, versus if you're targeting maybe like a little bit older buyer audience in their 50s, let's say, so does that shift your understanding of when to go app versus when to go e-commerce site?
I think so. I don't necessarily like to say it, but I think it's still the case that if your audience is slightly older than millennials, you're probably good to start with a website, and an app would not necessarily bring too much more on the table. Again, it depends on what you're selling, and even in the space that you mentioned, the manufacturing or B2B. So I would say there's a little bit of that. As a B2B moving into B2C or like going direct, I think, it's always easier to start with a website for sure. So you might as well do that. An app costs a lot of money. There's a lot of maintenance that goes with it. So you definitely have to think about it thoroughly, so you have the finance, and you can build something that would be great, and not just fast and, like I said, just a copy of your website. If it's just the same thing, it might not be that useful. But nowadays there's the rise of the no code community. You can build apps and have a lot of tools without not necessarily having to recruit like 5 devs and product people. And you can maybe do it almost by yourself or with a small team and kind of figure it out how to go direct to consumer, but definitely for millennials and also definitely for Gen Z, going direct to them with the rise of DTCs and direct to consumer companies in any category is really exploded in the past 10 years. So that's definitely that should definitely be a reason to think about having an app and really own a little bit more of your customers, of our users. But yeah, that's I guess that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of on that same track, when we're talking about creating apps, so when you create an app such as Depop or Deliveroo, which group of users do you market to and target first, sellers or customers? So kind of the chicken and the egg problem. Who do you go after first?
So that's a very interesting one. We did not, from what I remember, we did not really necessarily have a clear focus for a long period of time. So it would be like, what I mean by that is that we would do both at the same time.
Right.
The answer is kind of do both. That's the best thing. So, but at the beginning, you need a strong supply. So whatever your supply is, you need to get the quality. I think that's more important than on the buyer side, where the buyer at the beginning could just be buyer. A quality buyer is a buyer that comes back many times, but you don't really know that at the beginning, versus you can control the quality of the supply coming through. So yeah, that's doing a bit of both with a slightly more focus on the the seller or the supply side. So same for Deliveroo, the supply would be the quality of the restaurant, having quality food to attract buyer because they want to buy those meals that they can't get necessarily on other apps or at certain times. So that was that. And then on Depop is on the seller side of things. So like quality sellers with like good shops, good inventory, people that would, list a lot of items many times. And then the parallel is the same for Laced, focusing on quality supply of resellers, and then people having good people with like great depth in sneaker collection that they want to get back into the market, and so I guess that's my answer. Do a bit of both, but focusing a little bit more on the quality of the supply, at least at the beginning, and then further down the line you can have like 100% focus just on the supply and have like marketing campaigns all around that. But that's a little bit further down the line once you get a little bit of the snowball effect of the marketplace going a little bit.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's kind of the fun of the moving target, right? If your marketing plan just says one thing, that's not going to help your company do anything. You got to really, keep innovating and go on. But I guess like the mantra that I hear from a lot of people is kind of like an old school mantra of like build it first and then they'll come. And I don't think that's necessarily as true anymore. I think that like what you're saying, you kind of maybe you can follow a 70-30 rule, or you can go 60-40, but you got to kind of parse those two things out, and you still have to be focused on a user acquisition at the beginning, at least, to get the downloads and get the people interested. So early adopters have to still come in.
Yeah. I think it's also linked to what you're saying, to mostly product people that think a great product just markets itself. I don't think that's the case. Like even the greatest product of recent recent times have had like genius marketing behind. It's not just happened just from word of mouth. I read something recently on like other marketplaces, but like Airbnb, for example, like the work they've done on like referral programs at the beginning to get the supply going, etc. I mean, that's what built the momentum at the beginning. Same for Uber, same for Dropbox, same for all these companies. Like it's not, the product is great, which definitely should be. It helps because the opposite is also true. Like you can't really market something that is not great. You can't make magic on that. So yeah.
So then how would you continue with, for example, like let's say Depop or at the beginning stages, how do you encourage these sellers from other platforms to take the risk and start selling on your platform instead? Is it just having a good product or already having a base of people that are ready to buy?
So eventually it becomes like it works on the details. So it's you've got a base of buyers, so you can attract them just by saying, look, you can sell on our platform as well. Like it's just another option for them. The only thing that would be time consuming for them is relisting everything, for example, from one platform to another. But then the details comes in. So it's like, what's your selling? What's the fee? What are the little features that you have that other people don't have, that the competition don't have, and vice versa, and that will like skew people from one platform to another. And it's funny because it's the same thing we can always go back to other industries. It'll be the same thing between Deliveroo and Uber Eats. It'll be the same thing between Laced and StockX and like all these other like big players in the US, for example. Like then it becomes like a detailed thing, or maybe one of the platform will suddenly do like free fees for 30 days. So then it's like, okay, well, everyone comes in because you can sell everything and you don't lose any of your profit. So so yeah, that's how you kind of attract them. The marketing, I think, is just one part of it. So the USP or the kind of tagline you go after, or the community that you build is just one part of this. It doesn't do everything. I think the features and the fees and the product itself also plays a part, and I think it adds up to everything.
And I'm just curious, we're mentioning Deliveroo and Depop as to avoid you having to give away all the secret sauce for Laced, because we know we've had other co-founders on and other early adopters into these new businesses, and we don't want them to have to, feed their marketing strategy to their competitors type deal. So I should just preface that for all our audio listeners. We're just trying to make sure he doesn't have to give away his secret sauce for his business. But on that front, one of the things that has kind of occurred to me as this time has gone on, looking at the gig economy and some of these apps like Laced, like Deliveroo, like Depop, how much of that do you think is driven by this kind of inherent shift in people's want to kind of make additional income or a second income off of certain, items they have or collections they have, right? Versus something that maybe wasn't present before. Like I know, for example, my parents even didn't sell, their collectibles on eBay and try to buy new collectibles, right? But like someone in a millennial generation or a Gen Z generation, that's a really common hobby to have.
Yeah, it's. I think I've been thinking about this a lot. I think there's it's almost like a new shift in in like work life or side hustle type of life, which, like you said, our parents really didn't have, because I almost make the parallel from like the kind of industrial age into like services, like when we moved to like the earlier days of internet and a lot of people like obviously had to move on or didn't understand they had to move on, and a lot of people lost their job. I feel like we at there's another wave now of like there's even less. It's sad. Like it's sad for me to say, but I feel like there's a lot of people that realize due to COVID that maybe their job were at risk or they lost their job and everything. So they've been forced almost into thinking, what else can I do? How can I diversify my income? And how can I make like a few extra hundreds or whatever it is like on the side? So I don't think it's necessarily like a great thing, but some people are doing it very well and some people are not going to succeed. But like launching your own company or selling your clothes or getting a gig economy job, and delivering food on your bike, some people make good money out of it. But it's we know there is problem with the gig economy right now. It's not made yet to be like sustainable, and it's taking advantage to some extent to the people doing it. So I feel like it's a new, like I said, like I think it's a new wave into like people are getting a little bit forced into this side hustle mentality, and that's fueled as well by social media and the new generation that all thinking that they can all become entrepreneurs and they're all like gonna work for themselves, etc. I think it all fits and like together to build where we are now. So some companies are thriving through that. So if you have a selling like second-hand clothes app, you're thriving. Like all of them are growing. Like in the US, like all the other guys, I'm sure they're also like growing massively, like Poshmark and guys like that. And I think it's not gonna go away now. I think it's just been ingrained into people in the past 12 months. And it look like it's going to stay like this for a good part of this year, and maybe a portion of these people won't go back to what work was before.
Yeah.
So that's I don't know if everything I'm saying like totally makes sense, but I've been thinking about it for the past few months. Since like COVID and the lockdown in the UK. We're still like in pretty like restricted lockdown still. So I think that's all of that plays a part in where we are right now and why companies like this or it's kind of a good time, good place type thing. Like it just accelerated to this and makes them successful.
Yeah. And I think, as much as it's COVID relief to those that may be out of work, in a way to keep the lights on or keep the heat on during the winter and this kinds of things that are happening. I think, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how much you feel like this is also possibly like a culture shift or, this is like another for, millennial and Gen Z generations. This is more of a kind of like a pursuit of happiness, like something that, you do for fun on the side, like, sneakers are a very big thing for a lot of people. You have sneakerheads that just buy sneakers religiously and sell them for a profit later if they decide they want a different sneaker. And it's something that people really find a real joy and kind of happiness out of. And it's, yes, some about the money and making, that part of the side hustle and having that fun from it. But it's also part of the collection culture and part of the something that's, maybe changing in our society. I'm just curious your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. It's also linked to, so this is also into something else, which is the democratization of trading, like in general, and collection in a sense of making a profit in the short or long term. And like you said, some people are more passionate than others, and it doesn't necessarily mean getting a profit quickly out of it, but still they know the value of what they have, and they some big collectors will sell all their collection in one go for $1 million or something like that, and they will just cash that to buy a nice house and just like live like this now and then kind of move on. But the others, and I think most of the people are not like that. And the new generation has been educated on services. Well, in the US, for example, like it's problematic, but Robinhood, for example, has played a big part. StockX as well in placing things that were not stocks into like a trading framework. So sneakers was the first, streetwear, handbag, jewelries, watches. Now we're talking about trading cards, Pokemon and NBA cards, and that brings me back to like growing. Like I'm from the late 80s, so growing up in the 90s, like all my Panini cards, and I used to have like the NBA Panini book, and I need to find it. Actually, it's in back home in south of France. I'll probably have some rarities in there that I can maybe flip. But I think that's another shift that's happened in the past 5 years. It's really recent. It's like 5 years, and that's part of the side hustle thing. So some I don't want to say kids, but like younger people would use that as a way to make, again, a side income. And that creates a lot of opportunities, but it's not everyone's going to win big. So once it gets crowded, you'll get some of the scrap. But if you're in early, you might win big. And it's interesting because it creates some different levels of income. So you've got I would say like the tier where people are trading sneakers or trading cards. There's also the new thing, which is the NFTs. So it's digital assets that don't even exist. So I don't know if you saw, there's a new company, I think partly owned by the NBA, called NBA Top Shots, and you buy virtual pack of cards.
Yeah.
And I think it might be powered by blockchain. I'm not sure, maybe. But that's the new realm we're going into. So like billions of dollar company are going to be created out of thin air, like nothing really tangible. And that's going to be also like a source of side income. But then you get also like another level, like a bit deeper, which is people building income out of creating audiences on YouTube just by opening packs. So just people watching them opening something creates an income for them because they build an audience around it. So it's and that's going to take time for the mainstream to catch up, because it's so recent, it's so new. But things that people, well, I think my conclusion would be like people, like everything else, will adapt to a level of that. And there's going to be some more happy people than other, because, you know, society is going to change around that basically. And I think it's going to be, I'm really fascinated by it, like whether it's good or bad. I think it's very interesting to watch.
You mentioned in your summary, which was great to read through, by the way, as you had mentioned that you came from a background of using Facebook ads and how addictive Facebook ads can get, right? And I think a lot of marketers, a lot of more modern marketers working at brands get really stuck on advertising. And it's something we have a conversation with a lot of people about as marketers at Commercient, because we don't do any advertising. We actually do zero spend advertising. And so I would like to, also get your thoughts on advertising versus building an audience. What do you think is the big play?
So it's interesting. I think right now I'm definitely more for building an audience, but it doesn't mean you have to cut yourself from user acquisition and paid ads. You can be hugely successful with paid ads depending on your business model. Mm-hmm. That's why direct to consumer brands, I think, and you guys in the US have some like incredible guys doing that very successfully. It's all about the content. So if you got the right ads on the right audience, you can make a killing. So that's still possible, but it would not stand the test of time if you just do that. And I think even recently, like what we spoke about creating an audience or tapping into creators to jump on brands or collaborate with brands, that's still very nascent for brands to understand that and to do that. There's few big ones doing it, but I don't see as much. And every time you see some collaboration, it's like the Spotify one with Seth Rogen, and it's like, wow, But so I think it's still very nascent. Brands usually would use user acquisition first because it's still very addictive. You still get the reward straight away. So I still like it. I just think that it shouldn't be your only play, and if that's the case, then maybe you have to sit down and think about it a little bit more, because that's going to run out eventually. You don't build a brand on 6 seconds videos, and that's I think that's the easy thing to understand. You will build repetition. People will know your name. You'll build revenue for sure because they're very, very effective. But yeah, it won't last for 20 years. So if you're building a direct to consumer brand that you want to sell in 5 years or in 3 years, then yeah, that's great. Then you can just do that. I think that's my take on this. Yeah.
And I think what's interesting now is, even rather than saying build like a user base or a community around it, it's more these companies need to just start finding those bases, because they're already out there. It's just a matter of finding the influencers with those followers that would appreciate your product. So I think in the future we'll see much more influencer marketing. Like even on TikTok, there's so many people that are with these niche brands just because they have this following of 6,000 people, and the majority of those people would enjoy those products. So.
But it's because like influencer marketing is changing. You've got influencer marketing like you described, where you would reach out to some influencers on TikTok or Instagram, and you work out a deal, something with a KPI, and you measure ROI, and it's a one-off. That's still out there, but a deeper relationship into someone who will create content for you on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis, or take over your podcasts and do that for 2 years. That's another discussion. And I think most companies are not ready to have those discussions right now, because I think from my own experience talking to the C-suite and CEOs, CMOs, etc., it's like alien to them.
Yeah.
And I'm being blunt, but I think that's true. If I were in a meeting room now trying to explain that to the CEOs I work for, they would just be like, okay, let's talk about it in 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think that is? Is it just the age gap, or just the way that they've been taught marketing in past?
No, I think it's really hard to summarize it into one reason. I think there's more than one reason. One of them is business numbers, ROI. How do you measure ROI on that? How do you measure the ROI of an audience? It takes time. So it's a bit like trying. It's a similar struggle to like people in SEO trying to sell SEO in companies. SEO takes time.
Yeah.
So when you try and get results in the first 3 months, you're not going to see. Maybe you're going to see some, but maybe you won't. So what do you do after that? Do you kill it? Do you say, building an audience is not for us? Like it doesn't work or something like that. So you can draw parallel with like SEO a little bit. It's a long-term play. So I think that's one of them. Depending on like the type of investors you've got in your company, they might not, necessarily want that or understand that. And also just, generally speaking, the KPIs of your business and how your team is set up. A marketing team, often there is a paid marketing team or user acquisition marketing team. This team has very short-term metrics. It's like, this week, how many orders did we get? So on that basis, forget about talking about long-term community building and influencer marketing that way. You can talk about influencer marketing in a very short-term way. So it's like, can we get this influencer tracking code and get as many orders as we can in the next 48 hours? Okay, that's the kind of discussion you can have in the realm of that team. And then you've got a brand marketing team, which are often kind of the old school type of marketing, and they don't necessarily understand these new ways. I'm not saying always, sometimes, but usually they are more like partnerships marketing type of people. So they're talking about brands to brands partnerships, or their KPI often will be brand awareness percentage point, or over a quarter or something like that. And that's also, I don't think that's the right KPI to measure community building or using influencer for community building over time. So I think because of those reasons, you create an environment where you can't measure what we're talking about.
I think that might be the greatest explanation I've heard to that question. I'm going to give you the award for that one for sure. I think you hit the nail totally on the head, which is that brand marketing people in general tend to be a little older. That tends to be where you go for your career now if you were a traditional marketer before, because you're certainly not doing paid acquisition or ads, or there's very little people that have transitioned into the digital advertising space from traditional advertising. They mainly all transitioned over to brands. And then I think you're 150% right. The metrics are wrong. It's the stuff you're tracking isn't what you should be tracking. And, I noticed that you and I were both connected to a previous podcast guest that we had on, Segram Verge, who wrote a book called ABM is B2B. It's one of the books I recommend to just about everyone. And if you haven't listened to his podcast, I'm going to plug it again one more time. But I think, what you're tracking, if you're still tracking brand impact and NPS scores. Those are important, sure, but they're not the primary target of brand marketing anymore. That ship is gone, And I also think, and I want to hear your experience because you've worked at a lot of startups. How often social media metrics in community building are overlooked by the brand marketing teams, and they're more seen as immediate result feedback in the advertising teams.
Yeah. I've seen that every time. Always. It's always the case. So I think it's due to the time frames we're talking about. Like 10 years ago, none of that existed.
Yeah.
So there's no career and if you've been in there for 10 years or 15 years, like some people say, like I've been in digital for 15 years, it changed so much last year.
Yeah.
It's like literally changed so much 6 months ago that you have to be like such a practitioner, like on the pulse to like really understand how things are moving. And so I don't blame anyone or the teams or whoever's in charge of social media versus the paid side versus, the CMOs, for example. It's just that it's changed so much that almost like, these titles don't even like make any sense anymore. It's like you can, I think today you can get like a kid, like someone who's like 19 or whatever in your marketing team. The guy is going to be more knowledgeable than, here you go, more knowledgeable than like anyone else in a team.
Yeah.
I think that's more true. It's harder on the paid side because you need to have managed budget. It's harder to do that on your own. But anything organic, anything engagement based, anything community building, anything social metrics, social listening, all that stuff. Like someone who's 18 can be the most knowledgeable person on the table, and companies don't. I mean, they surely don't understand that, and it's like won't give the responsibilities to that person to have meaningful impact. So it's like very gated, very siloed, and yeah, that's the problem. And then you've got like slightly older, for example, social media managers that, again, it changed so much that they're on like old metrics, or they don't look at the right thing, or they would just report on follower growth, and don't look at engagement. There's so many accounts in so many industries that have like 1 million plus followers. They don't even have like 0.5% engagement rate on their content. There's like no one cares. The ratio is completely wrong, and some accounts, some brands, they don't even have 100,000 followers and have like 5% plus engagement rate. That's like almost, that's more people engaging on that account than on the 1 million followers account.
Yeah.
But it's like vanity metrics, and then going back to like seniority, the more senior you go in a company, the less that person's going to understand. So yeah, in the past 6 years, I had some crazy discussion with like CMOs and about things that were like didn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It definitely does happen, and I don't think it's intentionally tone deaf, like you're saying. Like it's keeping track of things.
No,
like
it's just the pace of things.
Well, thank you, Yoann. I appreciate you giving us this extra time with you. I really, really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and give you this last couple minutes for you to plug anything you want to plug. We kind of give that to our guests. It's plug time, so go ahead.
That's great. I wanted to talk about my podcast, actually. So I've launched a podcast called Digital Marketing Finesse in January. It's released every week, and it's like nice, a bit like this podcast, nice discussions around marketing, creators that have either like build a company, build an audience, or just, like creators or marketers in companies, in startups. So it's going well. Go have a listen, subscribe to it. And I also, so the interesting part for me doing so, which I think you'll be interested in as well, is like I'm doing a mini funnel through WhatsApp via text message. So you can text me, add you to the list, and then you can ask questions before I record the episode with a guest. And that way I'm creating an audience, once again, that I can literally text or send a voice message or a video straight away. So it's a great way to build an audience that I would own regardless of what happened in social platforms or whatever. So far it's like almost, I think we're pretty much 200 people in the list. Yeah, I've got some good plans, like maybe launch a clubhouse room every week to talk about marketing. So yeah, you should definitely check it out. Digital Marketing Finesse. And to get like everything from the show and the behind the scene, it's on my Instagram. So Yoann Pavy, my first name.
We'll put links to that in the show notes as well. So don't worry.
Thank you guys. That's it for the plug.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And also we need to mention our product, Commercient Sync. So Commercient Sync syncs compatible ERPs and CRMs. If you want to learn more, you can go to our website, commercient.com, and let your salesperson know that you're using the promo code podcast7. And again, links to everything about Commercient are in the show notes.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the NextGen podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the NextGen podcast at wherever you find your podcast today. So that you never miss an episode. You can find more NextGen podcast content up on all the Commercient social media channels and the Commercient YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe there if you haven't already. For full-length episodes with video on, you get to see Yoann's very cool beard and his great Yankees hat. And all of those channels are at Commercient. Thanks so much for listening.